With this, the Lord of Lanka felt an awakening and transformation of his consciousness, as he realized what appeared was nothing but the perceptions of his own mind, and he found himself in a realm free from such projections. Due to the stockpile of good karma from previous lives, he suddenly gained an understanding of all teachings, the ability to see things as they really are and not how others see them, how to examine things with his own wisdom while remaining free from discursive views, and all the abilities of a great yogin no longer dependent on others, namely, how to manifest himself in various auspicious forms, how to master all skillful means, how to know the nature and characteristics of the stages of advancement, how to delight in detachment from the self-existence of mind, will, and conceptual consciousness, how to liberate himself from views involving the three continuities, how to refute the arguments of followers of other paths concerning causation, how to understand Buddhahood, self-realization, and the Tathagata Garbha, and how to live with the knowledge of a Buddha. Then, from the sky and from within himself, he heard a voice say, "Well done, Lord of Lanka. Practitioners should practice as you have practiced. They should see Tathagatas and Dharmas as you have seen them. Any other way would be nihilistic. They should examine things while remaining free from the mind, the will, and conceptual consciousness. They should look within and not be misled by external appearances, or fall prey to the doctrines, views, or meditations of Shravakas, Pratyeka Buddhas, or followers of other paths. They should not delight in idle or frivolous talk, or cling to the views of the Vedas, or become attached to exercising power over others, or indulge in such meditations as the 6 dhyanas. This, Lord of Lanka, is the understanding of all great practitioners, who thereby overcome false doctrines and refute mistaken views, who eliminate attachment to a self, and who make use of the subtlest wisdom to transform their consciousness. This is the Mahayana path that leads to the stage attained by Buddhas. You should therefore devote yourself to such an understanding. Lord of Lanka, this teaching will become clearer as you become adept at cultivating samadhi and samapatti. But don't become attached to the realms cultivated by lesser practitioners and followers of other paths, or consider the states they imagine as blissful. Followers of other paths cling to the belief in a self and the view that the world is real and that the material elements, substances, and tendencies exist. Or they insist that ignorance and the chain of causation are real. They make distinctions where there is only emptiness. Lost in projections, they become captives of the actors and actions of their own mind. Lord of Lanka, this teaching is the pinnacle of Mahayana understanding, for it enables practitioners to achieve self-realization and to enjoy higher levels of existence. Lord of Lanka, through such understanding, one removes obstructions and calms the myriad waves of consciousness and no longer falls prey to the views and practices of other paths. Lord of Lanka, because followers of other paths cling to their belief in a self, they become lost in dualistic views concerning the nature of consciousness. Well done, Lord of Lanka. As you reflected just now upon the meaning of seeing the Tathagatas, this is how you should view the Buddha. Ravana then thought to himself, I wish I could see the Bhagavan again, for the Bhagavan is the master of all those forms of yoga that give rise to an inner realization free from fabricator or fabrication, and beyond the understanding of followers of other paths. His is the knowledge realized by yogins, and his is the experience of the bliss of samadhi, the great bliss only attained through meditation. I wish by means of his miraculous powers I could see the compassionate one again, the one in whom the fuel of passion and projection has been burned up, the one surrounded by the sons of Buddhas, who is able to penetrate the thoughts of all beings and travel to all places and know all dharmas without showing any signs of effort. I wish I could see him, so that I might attain what I have not yet attained, and not relinquish what I have already attained, and might advance to that realm marked by the absence of projection and the great bliss of samadhi where Tathagatas dwell. Knowing that the Lord of Lanka had already attained the forbearance of non-arising, out of compassion for the 10-headed king, the Bhagavan once more appeared on the jewel-adorned, pearl-shaded summit, and the Lord of Lanka once more beheld all the glorious scenes that appeared earlier on the peaks, including the Buddhas, the Arhats, the fully enlightened ones with their 32 inspiring attributes, and with himself and Mahamati standing before them on each peak, while the Buddhas discoursed on the inner realization experienced by Tathagatas, and while the yakshas surrounding them discussed the language used to express this teaching. All this was witnessed by the king. The Bhagavat, too, saw all those assembled there, but by means of his inner awareness, not his physical eye. Like a yawning lion, he smiled a great smile, and he emitted rays of light from the curl between his brows, from his sides and his waist, from the swastika on his chest, and from every hair and pore. A blazing radiance that resembled a world-destroying conflagration, rainbows in the sky, or the sun at dawn. From afar, Shakra and Brahma and the 4 guardians beheld the Bhagavan sitting and smiling at the summit of Lanka as if it were Mount Sumeru. Together with the Bodhisattvas in the assembly, they all asked themselves, "Why is the Bhagavan, the master of all dharmas, smiling like this and radiating light from his body? And why is he sitting there without speaking, unmoved by the bliss of samadhi or the self-realization of Buddha knowledge, and gazing like the king of beasts upon Ravana, and concerned with the progress of his practice?" Mahamati Bodhisattva had previously agreed to Ravana's request out of compassion, and knew the thoughts of the Bodhisattvas in the assembly, and he knew that because of their delight in verbal instruction, beings in future ages might become confused by their preference for words over meaning, or by their attachment to the practices of lesser paths or other teachings, and they might wonder, since the Tathagata has already transcended the realm of consciousness, why he was smiling such a great smile. In anticipation of their curiosity, Mahamati asked the Buddha, "What is the cause of such a smile?" The Buddha replied, "Excellent, Mahamati. It is excellent that upon considering the true nature of the world and hoping to awaken beings of the past, the present, and the future from mistaken views, you have asked me about this. For a wise man should ask questions, not only for his own benefit, but for the benefit of others. Mahamate, Ravana, the Lord of Lanka, has asked the Tathagatas, the Arhats, the fully enlightened ones of the past, a twofold question, which he now wishes to ask me. And because this teaching is not something those who follow lesser paths or other teachings can understand, this 10-headed yaksha shall also ask Buddhas in the future." Aware that Ravana wished to question him, the Bhagavan said, "Lord of Lanka, whatever you would ask, ask now, and I will put an end to your doubts and replace them with joy. And you will be able to see by means of wisdom, Lord of Lanka, instead of projection. And you will be able to know the practices appropriate for each stage, and the way to attain the truth of self-realization and the bliss of samadhi. And while in samadhi, you will be protected by Buddhas, and will avoid the mistakes cultivated by those of lesser paths. And while dwelling in the unshakable stage, the wisdom stage, and the Dharma cloud stage of the Bodhisattva path, you will penetrate the truth that all dharmas are without self-existence. And you will find yourself seated upon a giant jeweled lotus flower, where you will enter countless samadhis and be instructed by Buddhas. Lord of Lanka, As you see yourself seated upon this giant jeweled lotus flower supported by the power of the Buddhas, you will be surrounded by countless bodhisattvas also seated on lotus flowers, and all of them will be gazing upon you. This is an indescribable realm, and it is by cultivating the efficacious practices of the various stages of this path that you will be able to see this indescribable realm and thereby experience the infinite characteristics of the Tathagata stage, which is something that has never been witnessed by followers of lesser paths or other teachings, not even by Brahma, Shakra, or the four guardians. As the Buddha spoke, the Lord of Lanka rose to his feet and proceeded to cover the peak with a myriad flawless jeweled lotuses, while a host of celestial maidens accompanied him, bearing multicolored garlands, flowers of every kind and hue, incense and fragrances of every sort, jeweled banners, flowered umbrellas, and colored flags, and wearing necklaces of various lengths, jeweled caps, and filigree tiaras, and all sorts of beautiful attire, the splendor and rarity of which had never been known, much less seen. He also conjured a canopy of pearls and countless jeweled banners above the Buddha and the Bodhisattvas, and musical instruments surpassing anything that existed among the Devas, Nagas, Yakshas, Gandharvas, Asuras, Kinnaras, Mahoragas, humans and non-humans in the realm of desire, as well as instruments from Buddha lands throughout the 10 directions. After he had done all this, King Ravana suddenly rose in the air to a height equal to more than 7 palm trees. As he stood there in space, all kinds of musical instruments, flowers, perfumes, and garments rained down and filled the sky, which he then used as offerings to the Buddha and the Bodhisattvas. And once he had presented his offerings, he descended from the sky and seated himself upon an adjacent jewel-covered peak that was also adorned with giant jeweled lotuses as bright as the sun or lightning. Once the Buddha saw that Ravana was seated, he smiled and waited for him to present his twofold question. King Ravana then asked, "Bhagavan, I have asked the Tathagatas, the Arhats, the fully enlightened ones in the past, about the 2 kinds of dharmas, and they have answered. I am now asking again in hopes that the Bhagavan might explain the meaning of their words. Bhagavan, I have been instructed in the 2 kinds of dharmas by apparition Buddhas, but not by the primordial Buddhas. The primordial Buddhas cultivate the bliss of samadhi and do not speak about the realms imagined by the mind. Most honored one, as the Tathagata is a master of all dharmas, I hope the Bhagavan, the Arhat, the fully enlightened one, will now explain these 2 kinds of dharmas about which these sons of Buddhas and I wish to hear." The Buddha replied, "Then ask, Lord of Lanka, about these 2 kinds of dharmas." The king of the Yakshas then rearranged the jeweled crown and necklaces and other ornaments that graced his body and said, "The Tathagata has said that dharmas should be abandoned, and non-dharmas even more so. Bhagavan, what do you mean when you say we should abandon these 2 kinds of dharmas? Bhagavan, what constitutes a dharma, and what constitutes a non-dharma? And if we should abandon something, why these 2? Wouldn't this result in projecting the existence of something or the non-existence of something, something that is real and something that is not real? If all we do is give rise to projections instead of the undifferentiated characteristics of our repository consciousness, we will behold strands of hair in the sky and realms of impure knowledge. Bhagavan, if this is the nature of dharmas, how are we to abandon them?" The Buddha replied, "Lord of Lanka, you see how ignorant people distinguish things as fragile and impermanent as a clay pot, do you not? The distinctions among dharmas and non-dharmas are the projections of foolish people, and not how things are viewed according to Buddha knowledge. Lord of Lanka, foolish people see things in terms of characteristics, not the wise. Lord of Lanka, Fire is seen as something uniform, but when it destroys such things as buildings or trees, its flames are distinguished depending on the shape and size of the material that burns. Why don't you see that dharmas and non-dharmas are distinguished the same way? Just as a fire is seen as a singular continuity or as a diversity of flames. Or consider the continuity of a seed, Lord of Lanka, as it gives rise to such varying forms as sprouts, stems, joints, branches, leaves, buds, flowers, and fruits. And as with external objects, the same is true of internal objects, whereby ignorance gives rise to such dharmas as skandhas, dhatus, and ayatanas, as well as to the varieties of existence in the three realms, and to differences in terms of suffering and joy, good and evil, speech and silence. So, too, consciousness and its objects are the same, but differ depending on distinctions as to which is superior, neutral, or inferior, defiled or pure, good or bad. Not only are there distinctions among such things as these, Lord of Lanka, when yogins practice meditation, the characteristics of their internal realms are also marked by differences. How much more, then, are dharmas and non-dharmas marked by a multitude of distinctions? Thus, Lord of Lanka, the different characteristics of dharmas and non-dharmas are the result of projection.